I've never walked through the woods at night before. The slightest idea of it makes me incredibly uncomfortable. As for my friend Charlie, he was quite the opposite. He loved walking at night, may it be though the woods or elsewhere. On one particular night, he asked me to go through these supposedly haunted woods with him. I absolutely refused to go until he offered weed, which I myself had been dry for a solid month now. In March of Michigan, weed usually comes at a higher price, or at least in the part of Michigan I'm from. Around 8 o'clock p.m., he pulled into my driveway and honked me out of the house. This was very unlike him. He usually likes to come in for a few minutes when picking me up. He must have been very eager to leave. I've gone on walks with him before, and he's usually quite serious. Head always looks straight forward, never speeds up or slows down. We have had our most intellectual conversations we've ever had compared to just sitting around. These walks of him were treated as if they were rules, or like walking was an ARF. Anyhow, I come out of the car in the mag light ready, and a set of spare batteries. I even grabbed the largest fold knife I had, just for safe measure. "So, Charlie, about these woods," I said. "Yeah," he replied. "Where the fuck are they? We've been driving around for a good hour now, and I'm getting restless. I thought we were going for a walk, not a ride." "Fuck you. We'll get there when we get there." "Whatever." "So, what makes this place haunted?" I got high and started looking at the strangest places in the state, and this one was the closest around. It's called Seven Gables. Apparently, some witch used to live in these woods 100 to 200 years ago, right? I can't remember why, but I guess she cursed the place. There's a good X-mile path through these woods, and if we hear a scream, the last person to leave the property is supposed to die somehow. Also, some people moved into the witch's house some time later. A husband, a wife, and 2 daughters. One night, the husband went nuts, took a shotgun, and shot his wife, and then locked his 2 daughters in their room and burned the place down. He was gonna do himself with a gun when he suddenly found some rope hanging in a tree, already made into a noose, so he hung himself. Legend has it the curse is what made him go crazy that night. Anyway, I asked around in this place, and everyone has some sort of scary story. Cell phones go out. People see little girls dancing in trees. People hear screaming. Just sound like a good time. Okay, so how do you know that not just people fucking with travelers? I mean, if it's in the top list spooky places, I'm sure it gets a lot of traffic from stupid people like us. The neighbors must hate it, so I'm sure they'd fuck with tourists, I replied. "Hey, I'm not saying one thing or another, but we're going," Charlie replied. "Fine. Oh, and apparently no one can find the house. That's the last thing I read. There's so much woods that a lot of the paths aren't marked. There's a main path that leads you into the middle of the woods, and we should come across a cornfield surrounded by woods. There should be around 2 more hours of path past that. Then it's all more or less uncharted territory. The house is in that area. And we're going to find this house? Especially this late at night?" I asked. "Fuck, I hope so. But I was just in the mood for some adventurous walk tonight. Since you're on all the time, I figured you'd want to go." Finally, have a story of your own to tell, he replied. I guess. So, how much farther away are we? We eventually came up to a dirt road named Seven Gables. It's only about 4 minutes long, and it dead ends at the gate that led the path into the woods. The road was more of a very, very large driveway of some haunted house no one knows exists or not. At this point, I remember that there was a cheerleader and her sister who went to my high school. They were in an accident with a drunk driver on the night of prom. It was rumored that her and her sister were both here that same night with a group of friends. They were the last ones over the property line, and they were apparently getting chased by something. They sped off to leave, and as they got closer to home, the accident happened. I even remember receiving an invitation to the funeral I never went to. Regardless, it had to have been better than coincidence. Charlie noted that he read at the gate we approached just considered the property line of the area. The most appropriate phrase I could think of to piss him off at the time, because that's what friends do, was, "So the last person back over the gate is a rotten egg?" He gave me a full-faced glare and hopped the gate. "Come on, ya pansy." I started walking in a slow motion towards the gate and pushed him more. He glared at me again, pulled out a joint, lit it, and walked off. I was not about to get my turn skipped, so I chased his ass down. I walked through the woods for what felt like at least an hour or so. I reached for my phone to check the time. It was 12:40 a.m., and we had arrived at 11:22. While I had my cell phone out, I noticed big, bold letters labeled "No Service" where my bars should have been. Apparently Verizon is not everywhere I go. After showing Charlie my service was out, he pulled out his phone and as well, and sure enough, no service. We poked at each other, making very fake spooky sounds, and continued our path. The path we were on began to grow narrow and curvy as it became more and more covered with thick foliage. I know I was high, and I know that I grow paranoid when I'm high, but I began to hear noises. It wasn't like the shuffling in a brush or branches moving. It was definitely no bird or owl, no crickets or frogs. It sounded more like boom sounds in a distance. It wasn't an explosion, but what I can only describe as heavy bass sounds or something like that. Giant dropping and hitting solid dirt. That's what it sounded like. I turned to ask Charlie about it, and the only thing he said was, "It's been getting louder the further we've been going down this path. I've been hearing it for a while." I wasn't gonna say anything. After a few moments of carefully listening, he was right. It was getting louder. We could even start to feel it beneath our feet. It had finally got so loud that it seemed as if we were standing next to a shitty car, that someone had dropped way too much cash for shitty subwoofers blaring their shitty rap, and then it stopped. When it did stop, we were coming to a large bend in the path. When we turned through the bend, we found the cornfield. It was hard to imagine a cornfield in the middle of the woods from listening to Charlie's story, or at least I had never heard of something like that. It wasn't that large of an area, but lo and behold, there it was. It was much untamed, and there wasn't really anything growing in it. It hardly even had any grass. It was also very hilly. Enough to where if one of us went down around a small hill, the other wouldn't be seen around it. We split up and explored this field for a little bit, searching for anything to show each other. There was nothing but old leftover garbage that other tourists had left on their visit. After 10 minutes of aimlessly wandering, Charlie yelled out my name. I could hear him running in my direction. I ran toward him too, until I saw his flashlight. Then let him just run to me. "Sup, Meng?" I said. "Someone started to run towards me through the woods," he replied. I was more than sure that he was fucking with me until I saw a dark figure approaching from behind him. It was too far away to see the flashlight, so I reached into my pocket and started to run my fingers through the groove of my knife blade. I was not about to die in the middle of nowhere. As the figure got closer, I was able to start making out features. It was definitely another person. He got close enough to where I could even begin to see colors of what he was wearing. And I got a reply. "Thank Jesus!" It was a middle-aged man wearing a brown vest, hiker boots, and a backpack. He was covered in blood. "You two need to get the fuck out of here now!" the stranger yelled. "Wait, who the hell are you?" There was a car parked by the gate. "We were the only ones here," I asked. "My name's Tim. I don't live too far away from here, so I biked. But you two need to leave now," Tim replied. "Fucking hold on a second and don't get the fuck any closer. What the hell are you covered in and why?" Charlie asked. "We don't have much time. I don't know how far the thing is behind me. I've been running and lost for 4 fucking hours," Tim screamed. We didn't really know what else to do at this point. We took the man's advice. With him in front of us and me still feeling the groove of my knife, we ran down the path. The man did not hesitate to make it over the gate before we did. Fucking urban legends. We walked towards Charlie's car and Tim began his story. "I come out here every Friday night with my 3 hounds. I'm an amateur ghost hunter. We came here tonight and all my gear and my boys. We started right behind me and I felt a little slow. I know that spirit energies are more active at night, and I've heard every story there is to this place. For the 5 months that I've been coming here, I've only found orbs in my footage. No audio, no faces, nothing. I bring my boys because they can pick up on stuff more than I can, and before my cameras and meters do. Today, they took off barking in the woods, and I chased after them. They split up on me, so I just followed Jonathan because I knew he was the closest. He howled differently than the others. I followed him until he got too far, and I figured they're smart dogs. They'll find me in no time if I wait by where they took off. I got lost trying to find my way back to the path, and I found a house. I took out my camera since I was sure that this was the house all the stores were talking about. I went inside and started taking pictures. Tim started to shake and sob as he reached for his camera. I looked over at Charlie, and he was gripping a flashlight, ready to strike this man. I knew he was reaching for his camera, but I don't think he did. I pulled out a cigarette and passed it to him. "Thanks. You have to see these photos," Tim said. We started flipping through the photos. I hardly looked at the house at all. It was a burned damage. I could see that Tim had hardly smoked his cigarette since he was focusing too hard to just not explode into tears. After viewing a bunch of burnt wreckage, the photo started to give off more of an ill feeling each time he hit next. Finally, he hesitated to hit the next button again. He wiped his tears off his face, leaving more blood smeared than tears. He hit next again. It was a photo of 2 of his dogs, disemboweled and dragged across the floor. Someone or something had used their blood to draw some giant symbol on the floor. It wasn't a pentagram, but it gave the same dark feeling a pentagram would. I gave him the photo like this. Tim gave up and holding back and started to cry. He hit next again. It was more or less the same photo, but with one of his dogs looking up at him. It was barely, but still alive. I picked him up and held him and cried with him. That's why I'm covered with blood. Tim had thrown up all over his and our shoes. "Aw, fuck, dude!" Charlie yelled. I dropped Isaac when I heard a woman start humming in the room next to me. I could hear that bitch walking to me, so I just ran. I fucking ran and ran and ran. I couldn't figure out how to get the hell out of these woods. These fucking woods! And then I started to see and hear things all around me. These things were following me. I never found Jonathan, but he's probably dead too. When I was certain I lost them, I saw lights up again. That's when I found you guys. We took whatever bottle of water we had in the car and we gave him to Tim to wash himself off. Charlie offered to take Tim home, and so took my coat from him to sit, kept the blood from getting all over the seat. I never cared much for that coat anyway. We started to hear a single dog howl before we took off. I turned to look down the path behind the gate. I could hear something small running in our direction. "Go! That ain't my dog! That's something else! We gotta go now!" Tim yelled. Charlie started the car and hopped in. I looked back behind us as we drove off, but I couldn't see anything. Through the darkness, we dropped Tim off. I didn't say thank you or even look back as he walked inside. "So, what do you think about all this?" I asked. "Whatever the fuck this weed is, I'm sure as hell gonna buy more after tonight," Charlie replied. Charlie then took me home. Throughout the whole ride, he kept checking his mirror and looking over his shoulder. He was definitely uneasy about something. Before he stepped out of his car, I asked him if anything was wrong. He drove off without saying a word. Whatever, he's just high, I thought. I threw the bloodstained coat away and called the police to let them know about the incident. It was now about 5 a.m. and I was tired. I never even found out what the bass sound was. At around 1 p.m., I woke up and did my daily morning routine. I went and checked my phone and I had 132 missed calls and a single text. All from Charlie. Holy fuck. I thought before trying to call him back. No answer. I didn't have any voicemails or anything. All I had was a single text message. I opened it up and all it said was, "I still hear that noise." Pocket dialing? What the fuck is this text? I never got hold of him and I couldn't figure out any of it. A couple of days later, I received a phone call from Charlie's dad. He said he hadn't seen Charlie since before he left to pick me up that night of our walk. It's now been nearly 3 months since this incident had occurred, and no one has seen or heard from Charlie since that night. Police had stopped by numerous times and questioned me about the incident. They said they can't find anyone named Tim who lived in the area, and no one in the area has even heard of some amateur ghost hunter. They also claim they've heard stories of the 7 Gables, and it's just an urban legend. There is no house, no ghost, no witch, nothing. I know I'm the department's #1 suspect, but unfortunately, the only thing I can tell the police about the whereabouts of my friend Charlie is that he was the last one over the fence.